I'm Jenn Ellis.
I'm Benni, Allan.
And together we're the co-founders of Aora. Aora is the space for your senses, and our aim is to be pioneering a culture of care. As a bit of background, I'm a curator, and for many years I was a gallerist between Geneva to Hong Kong, Shanghai, and now London.
And that's where we actually met.
Yeah.
So I'm an architect. I run a practice called Aora Architects, and we met working on a site-specific installation. And the thing that connected us was an interest in working on projects that were all about art, space, and context. We're drawn to making work that involves bringing new ideas into the world, and in particular, we want to be able to create things that people can enjoy. We thrive on the challenges that working with all sorts of places brings, and that goes for the digital space too. As creative practitioners, we want to question and support the ways in which design and art can make an impact on someone, and that can be through an invitation to encounter a work of art, a moment of relaxation in our virtual space, or a product that adds ritual to your day. The same way that experiencing nature or finding a quiet place in a lush garden can help an individual's quest for quiet.
Aora has multiple sources of inspiration. And one of the main sources of inspiration is the Orozco Garden, where we are here today at South London Gallery down in Camberwell. One of the reasons why it is a big source of inspiration is this mixture of art, environment, a harmonious whole, which is something that we've been trying to achieve at every single point with Aora, despite it being, or in spite of it being, in the virtual world. I think one of the powers of art is that it makes you dream. And there are particular places all over the world that not only help you dream, but give you this ability to breathe and to expand. And those are places that very much have inspired us, such as South London Gallery, where we're so fortunate to be today filming. And it's that ability to see something, feel something, and not just think, right? Use another part of your body to engage and experience something beyond yourself in this actual moment. So the aspect of care is crucial to Aora. I mean, architect-built gallery, curator-led exhibitions. The verb curate comes from curar, which is to care. So at every single touch point, there's that element of care for the art that's shown, how it's shown, who is engaging with it, the audiences. So that thoughtful touch point runs throughout and hopefully is not something that's just put in, but felt by anyone who engages with Aora.
So I guess the story begins when Jenn approached me saying, hey, I'm interested in virtual reality. I'd had the luck in working on the Venice Biennale, looking at the design for spaces with dementia. And subsequently, I then worked on a project which was all about designing spaces for early years learners. So I'd already had this really strong interest in how you can make spaces for people that need it most, whether you're in a hospital bed or you actually get the value from seeing art. So the question was, how do you design a space which is all about art, but also the environment around you? And that was the question that we posed ourselves. So we designed this building in the digital space, which is never going to live in the real world. But it was trying to think about how you might make something that people can use to feel inspired or to suddenly forget where they are and actually transport them into a place which is going to promote discovery and well-being. So the way that we did that was we looked at places that inspired us, and we'd had many, many conversations about places that we'd travelled all over the world, and we've been very, very lucky to do that. So we thought about Naoshima, we thought about the Yorkshire Sculpture Park or l'Orangerie in Paris, these spaces which are dedicated to displaying art but have other things that are really special about them. It's the context that you're around, it's the way that light falls through the space, it's the connection with the landscape. And that was one of the starting points for how we would design a space in the digital. Bringing some of those aspects into the digital world has its own problems, but we had to think about ways that you can do it that feels the most natural. And that relates to the way that the texture on the wall feels like it's cave-like, so it's not like a traditional gallery, because you want to try and convey something very different. You want to make a space feel warm, even though you're seeing it through a screen.
Yeah.
And there are also other things that we looked at in terms of the way that openings are designed or the way that you create a sense of scale, trying to make something that isn't transporting you into a completely different world, but making elements and forms that people can connect with. We all have these subconscious understandings of space and things around us. We all know the size of a door. We all know where a door handle should be. And that really gives you an understanding of how you inhabit the world. And we wanted to bring that into our digital space. When you experience Aora, you first arrive at the hall, and the hall was designed with the inspiration of the turbine hall at Tate Modern, and it was that place that we really connected with. It's the place that people come and meet. It's also a place that you display art, and we wanted to create this grandeur, this almost cathedral-like quality to the space. Then you move through into the place, and the place is this circular hall which was inspired by the Domus Aurea, which I originally had been talking about when thinking about designing in the digital space. Domus Aurea was the palace built for Emperor Nero that was never really experienced by anyone. The moment it was completed, Nero was overthrown, and then as a punishment they built on top of it. So fast forward to the Renaissance period, explorers started to discover these spaces, and they went down and found all these relics and art, and that then influenced their own practice. And we felt that it was really beautiful to actually transport people into this space which was inspired by a place that no one could ever visit. And within that room, you have these series of little niches that have artworks, and depending on what the artwork is in there, it really transforms the feel of that space. And then you've got the path, and the path was designed as this really long infinity space. In architecture, you call it an enfilade. It's a series of little rooms that lead on from one another. And they're not necessarily rooms, but they're little spaces that lead off it that really make you stop and contemplate. And bit by bit, we've been developing the gallery depending on what the show is or what we want to try and convey, and each time tweaking it. For example, in the path, we opened up these windows so that you could see out, and whenever you look out, you don't really see anything. It's really this infinity view, and it's the idea of the fact that in terms of geography, in terms of space, this gallery could live anywhere, and it can live in your mind. You know, every different person that experiences the gallery might get a very different feel. And then most recently, we've designed the garden, and it's not your traditional garden, but going back to the ideas of the spaces that inspired us, Naoshima, all of our trips to Asia, Japan, the garden is really like a Japanese garden, or more closely like a cloister that you might find in Cambridge. And it's a space that's all about trying to connect you with the place and the environment around you so that it makes you breathe.
How Aora supports artists and galleries has shifted. When we first were thinking about launching, we had it in mind to show art from collections that would otherwise not be seen by a general audience. But then when COVID hit and the world was struck by the pandemic, this was in early 2020, we shifted gear and we realized that it wasn't necessarily collections that were not seen that needed support, but it was artists and galleries all over the world that suddenly were stripped of opportunities for display, exposure, connection, sale. So we launched our first exhibition with over 20 artists from Malaysia to South Africa to the UK at different stages of their careers, right? So they're not only emerging, but also established. And that also goes for the galleries themselves, right? That had all different types of exposures, whether through art fairs and museum shows. And over the last 5 exhibitions, because we just opened our 5th, we have also explored different mediums, right? So we started off with like 2-dimensional forms. That's what we felt comfortable articulating in the virtual world. But there was a turning point around chapter 3, where we started including 3D forms. And this was quite a breakthrough, because if you are, for example, a sculptor, let's say, and you do large-scale installations, that requires a lot of production. That is expensive and costly to ship, not to mention also there's all these limitations due to gravity. So one of the ways that we have been supporting artists is by permitting them to explore, to create, and to think big, right, without being limited. That's in terms of production, but I would also say that another way is by creating a sense of community as they explore all these technological advancements. I mean, there have been more and more people engaging with art online, more and more sales happening online, but how do you engage with all that digital innovation from a place of care? So hopefully we are sort of like the friends, the curators, the technical arbitrators to help navigate this big, big world that is increasingly buzzy. I think it's really interesting to see the way artists and galleries have been responding with not only Aora, but also the digital space over the course of when we launched or since we launched. We started off by having primarily visitors from the UK, and Benni and I, we check in on our infographics and see our traffic, and all of a sudden our traffic, I remember we had this moment when it ballooned to over 40,000 unique virtual visitors, and we looked at the breakdown. And when we're able to say back to the galleries and the artists, oh, you have visitors from the UK, from the US, from India, from Singapore, from Hong Kong, all in a single click, I mean, that's quite mind-boggling. That's incredible. To get your art in front of these people globally, that's amazing. It's really interesting when artists create work specifically for the digital environment. You have all different types of virtual dexterity, right? So you have, some artists who've already been creating things in 3D using Rhino or CAD, and then other ones who've literally just done a sketch. But I think, between, I guess, my background as a curator and Benni's background as an architect, we understand what someone creative is trying to say, but also how to spatially contextualize it. So I think there's that guidance, which is very, very important. And we also work with a really great tech team who's able to articulate. I think the resounding feedback that we've gotten is that it's fun, that it's exciting, that they didn't think it could be possible. And getting that sort of beautiful scintillation from creative minds is unparalleled.
The other aspect about working with artists in the digital space is that you're suddenly giving them a whole new medium for them to be able to test their ideas, things that they never imagined they would be doing. And I think Aora is a platform to be able to test those things, and we feel really privileged that some of those artists have taken a chance with us and being able to use Aora as a platform to be able to push their own practice. And that's something that we want to continue doing. And every time we launch a new chapter, we're also exploring new ideas and pushing boundaries of what we can do through our open calls. This also creates a community around what we're doing, and it really helps to push everything. As well as building an artist community who now recognise and trust us in this new adventure into the digital world, the way we've been connecting with people is through social channels and our members platform. We've been growing organically, and our team, the close network we've developed, and our following extends to every corner of the globe. Being digitally native, we're able to share ideas and connect with people who may not have access to a gallery or space that promotes a cultural programming. And we've learnt that the impact of the past 2 years has meant that many communities and institutions have been limited in what they can offer. In terms of accessibility, we know that this has been impacted, and Aora gives those with access to the internet a way of viewing and discovering art from the best artists in the world, in particular with the focus on providing culture and care experiences. The way that we've been connecting with people is through social mainly, but also we've got an incredible list of people now that we have connections with. During the pandemic, when we first launched, we had the Exchange series, which was a talk every single week, bringing people from all over the world talking about art, health, well-being. And it was really a place that all of a sudden, when everyone's stuck at home, it was a place that people could come to and talk about really interesting ideas. And that's what really took us to a whole new level in terms of our reach and experience of how people connect in the digital space. And we feel that by doing that, we've grown a really strong community that are now following us and really want us to propel and are really interested in what we're doing.
As Benni was saying, one of the main ways that we have been engaging with our community is through the exchange program. As a curator, doing different exhibitions around the world, I realized fairly early on it's not enough to just launch an exhibition and expect people to get it, right? You have an opening, maybe you have a talk or two. And so we've been very, very keen in having different types of activations. And at the start, these were primarily digital, online, via Zoom, and that was quite insane because we'd have people joining from Colombia to South Africa to India, and it's a uniform playing field because there is no limit of physical attendance, right? Which I think is something that we can really relate to. You know, if you're in London, you get primarily access to great culture, but why not be, you know, in other more remote places, and which is such an important reality with limited mobility, not to mention also different accessibility contexts and ideas. And ever since the world has started opening up a little bit more, because we are believers in connection and community building, we've also been interspersing it with physical experiences. So this is a key term we've been thinking a lot about, which is experiences. As soon as you enter the virtual gallery, or you maybe have a pop-up dinner, which we most recently had, whether you have one of our actual pop-ups where you can engage with our products in real life, all those different elements, which when you interact, you leave feeling something. A memory is created.
Each time we have an exhibition, we have to think very carefully about the artwork that's on show.
Yeah.
And this is very much a conversation between Jenn and I, between the virtual reality developer, and also between the artists. And going back to what I was saying, it was giving them a platform to be able to display art in a very different way. So we need to think about the lighting, we need to think about how it hangs on the wall, we need to think about scale. All of these things come together as a way of really designing in the digital space. And something that we've been talking about a lot in what we do is trying to design in the digital space with soul.
Yeah.
And to do that, it's all about care, it's all about calm. Everything that we do, even though it's about displaying art, is trying to bring those ideas into the digital space. You experience Aora primarily through the gallery, and that's all about viewing, but actually what we wanted to do is not just that, it's about connecting with people's senses, and we want to be seen as the space for your senses. So it's not just about viewing, but it's about hearing, and in each show we actually have a composer that creates a beautiful piece of music, which is trying to play with the idea of slowness and care. And then very recently, we've also been looking at other ways that you can connect with people's senses. So our very first product was the scent. And actually that goes back right to the start. We are a digital space, but we want to connect with people on a much deeper level. And we can do that through people's senses. So we developed this scent, which was a room scent, which is about making, bringing calm into your home through smell, and working really, really closely with specialists to be able to do that. We've also been looking at candles, ways that you can bring wellness into your home. And everything that we do, we try and bring the touchstones of Aora to these products. So we're also working with perfume designers and finding ways to actually add ritual to people's lives, which brings a slowness and is all about movement and how you can do things at home, which is really all about care. I think one of the things I've learned through working on Aora and with Jenn is that we're constantly trying to push boundaries and we're constantly trying to push ourselves. And that's one of the most rewarding things that we get to do, is really push our own creative practices through what we're doing. Ultimately, we're interested in trying to develop a product which is going to change people's lives. Yeah. If we can do that in the smallest way, it's something that we really feel proud of. And to us, it feels like we're doing it in small ways. And the next few years is going to be really interesting because the metaverse is pushing the potentials of what you can do and how you can connect. We want to continue doing what we do best, which is bringing things into the world that empower and support individuals both through online and digital experiences, and creating a place for people to connect. With our platform, we're looking at ways in which we can enhance the way you engage with the gallery and the architecture to make the experience of Aora a restorative and calming one. We want to bring slowness into people's lives and ultimately promote the benefits we see in art and architecture to a wider audience. At the same time, we would like to nurture artists and work closely with galleries to continue being able to be a place to investigate and experiment. Being agile and able to adapt is key to us, just in the same way that the virtual gallery is able to change for each exhibition that we launch. There's a lot that we look forward to creating in the digital space that we've carved out.
Through and with Aora, we keep on learning. I think a big breakthrough for us was starting to investigate more and more the 3D space, playing each time with the architecture as Benni has described, the light, the texture. It's a constant work in development. I think that's one of the beauties of a day in the life of Aora, is that no one day is sort of the same. We keep on checking in, and I would say that we never rest on our laurels. In a space that's constantly evolving, I think we observe, we act with agility, but we also act with ambition. And I think that ambition is really important because we want what's best for the artists, the galleries, the different creatives who we work with. A next chapter for us, I would say, is exploring, this buzzy metaverse, right? Like, what does it mean for us? What does it mean for Aora? How can we engage with this space with authenticity and integrity, looking at it from a place of abundance that is true to us, right? Continue on our quest of building the digital world with soul.